Hey, Spider Nation, welcome back to another episode of Spider-Man's Tangled WebShow. I'm Jonathan, webmaster of SpiderManFanRave.com, SpiderManFanRave.com. Going over there, we got some good Spider-Man articles, news, editorials, reviews, anything you want you could find over there, except chocolate chip cookies. Those are still in the oven. They should be done in about an hour and a half or so. All right, now I'm being joined by James. What's going on, James?
Not much. Enjoying my weekend. Packers won again, so I'm happy. It's having a good weekend. Like I said, don't want to repeat myself too much, but there's really nothing pretty much to talk about. I bought this comic. It's a piece of shit. So my shout out is to people to not buy this series because so far I read the first issue, and this has got to be the biggest piece of shit I ever read of a comic book, and that's saying something. This comic is bad.
For those of you who cannot see what he's talking about the first issue of Uncanny Avengers that came out this past week. He was not a fan of it.
Let's have Spider-Man join an Avenger team for all of 5 pages just to promote his own book.
Well, let's have Steve Rogers act out of character and say, "Oh yeah, okay, I care about media attention. Oh hey, let's have Deadpool over Spider-Man because Deadpool's financing us." When has Steve Rogers ever cared about finances?
Ooh. When has he ever cared about finances with Deadpool over a fucking company like Parker Industries?
Oh, okay. I in fairness, I did not read the book. This is all secondhand information from what James has told me, who actually read the book.
Just want to exhibit why this sucks. Rogue becomes a hypocritical racist to Inhumans because it's Marvel trying to sell the whole fact of, get it? The Inhumans are so prejudiced against, even the mutants hate them. Even though you think the mutants would have sympathy for the Inhumans because they go through the same thing. No, they're all hypocritical and hate the Inhumans. Why?
All right, before we get too much on the hate train with this podcast, what have I been up to this week? Well, it was midterm week for me, so that took up quite a bit of my time. Other than that, it's been rainy and cold here, and I've not been able to do much because of inclement weather conditions. Got some good grades on my midterms. I'm very happy about that. What else? Not much else to talk about other than that. I've discovered a few new places around town I like. But other than that, there's really not much to say here in Northeast Ohio. The Broncos won today. The Browns lost once again in overtime because it's Cleveland. It's what we expect. Yeah, it's like, to be honest, I call this Sunday at this point. It's just it's not expected that we'll win. We have a 2-4 record right now, so
just the difference of us here. John is like face palming, talking about the Browns, like, we lose. It's a normal It's Sunday. The Browns lose. We're used to this. There's a reason why the team moved away for 5 years, and then we got a new team. The Browns suck. Oh God! And I'm here. I got a smile on my face. My team won again. We're still undefeated. I got the jersey on. I got no cares in the world. The Bears also lost. I'm happy.
What do you have against the Bears?
They suck.
All right, then. Apologies to anyone in Chicago.
What?
Apologies to anyone who's from Chicago and likes the Bears.
Oh, come on. They'll say the same thing to you about my team. They'll go, the Bears. Packers suck. The Bears.
Oh, come on. All right.
What's what they're going to lose in the next series.
Enough of the football podcast. So let's get on.
I'm a Bulls fan, so at least there's one Chicago team I like. I'm a Bulls fan. I don't like the Bucks.
Moving on to the Spider-Man podcast here. What do we have? Well, we don't have any news this week. There were no issues of Amazing Spider-Man this week. There will be an issue this coming week, October 21st, which is also Back to the Future Day. You can find me at the hoverboard shop where I will be on that day, and I'll be driving in the Skyway at home, though hopefully the traffic's not as bad as it's predicted to be on that day.
I'm actually kind of excited for that because that one girl who I had a date with, I got her phone number, and we're going to go on a second date, and I'm going to be really excited for us to go see Jaws 19. So it's going to be really awesome.
Yes, and James, I must ask, will you be wearing your self-drying clothes when you go on this date? Because those are really the it thing now.
I don't know, because I spent most of my budget for clothes on those new self-lacing shoes, so I couldn't really buy any new clothes lately. So my clothes don't really dry on their own yet. But I'll get it later.
That is something I did this week. I did pick up those self-lacing shoes. They're a very good buy, but unfortunately, Unfortunately, I didn't have any money left after I had to pay about $150 for a cab because did you see the inflation levels just recently? I mean, they've skyrocketed.
I know. I'm just so excited that at least pizza prices stayed so low because of how they're really small now. We put them in our microwave and all of a sudden they become bigger. Like that was a great way to economy for pizza because when I got Pizza Hut last night, that was just a great way to save time and money, and I actually enjoyed that.
Yeah. Just so you know, there's this like awful biker gang that's going around. They may or may not crash into a courthouse within the next 72 hours. Just be on the watch for them.
That's okay. That's okay. That's a forecast for Hill Valley. We're nowhere near that, so we're fine.
Don't worry. Yeah, here in Northeast Ohio, the biggest thing we have to worry about is whether or not
we're sucking.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, okay. They're actually.
Well, Johnny Manziel fell off the wagon before he gets his next start.
Okay, let's not talk about Johnny Manziel, please.
What, you don't want to see this? You don't want me to do this? You don't want me to do this? I'm doing, for people that don't know, I'm doing the money side. I'm doing the money side. I'm Johnny Football. I'm doing this.
Okay, I was really hoping that name was not going to come up on this podcast.
Hey, before we lose his talents in Miami, John.
Before we lose all of our viewers,
Cleveland. I just pissed off a whole city of Cleveland.
Not really. To be honest, I removed any sort of opinion from this. Johnny Manziel is not well liked here, so you've probably just made the whole city of Cleveland laugh.
On the news, they just talk about how awesome he is and how all the fans want him to start.
Oh, that's not what I hear from the people I talk to. Johnny Manziel is not very popular in this city. All right. So tonight we're going to be talking about a very specific Spider-Man storyline. It's not very classic, but it's also not very recent. It's about 7 years old. We're going to be talking about Amazing Spider-Man: New Ways to Die, Amazing Spider-Man for the issue numbers. For those of you who are a numbering purist, Amazing Spider-Man number 568 to 573. I will just give basic creative team rundown here. Written by Dan Slott, pencils by John Romita Jr., inks by Klaus Janson, and colors by Dean White. And editor, sorry, I'm looking at the trade right now, so I'm having to look at the conglomerate. I don't know, the put together credits page. Editor Stephen Wacker, assistant editor Tom Brennan. And Spidey's brain trust is also Bob Gale, Mark Guggenheim, Dan Slott, and Zeb Wells. At this point, that would obviously change later on as we move into the latter half of the Brand New Day era. So just to give a little bit of context as to where this story is coming from, this is around the Secret Invasion kind of era. This is where Brian Bendis is moving Norman Osborn kind of out of the Spider-Man realm and into the big Marvel Universe Avengers villain realm. That's what he's trying to do here, and that is also what he's sort of setting up in this storyline. Meanwhile, Peter Parker is living with Vin Gonzalez, and this is very much right in the heart of the Brand New Day era where they're trying to emphasize Peter Parker is kind of a normal guy. He has problems. He can't find a job. He can't find a girl. He's having problems in his interpersonal relationships with his friends, with his family, with all of that. Aunt May is working at the Feast Center for Homeless People. Martin Lee, that subplot with him being Mr. Negative, that's ongoing right now. And also, we're reintroducing into the Spider-Man universe Eddie Brock as a character that we'll see later on in this story. We also have the Thunderbolts showing up because this is before the president throws out the Superhuman Registration Act. So this is still where Spider-Man is unregistered and a fugitive of the law. And so that whole subplot is still going on in this comic book. And also, because this was published in 2008, we have to have Barack Obama and John McCain going at each other. I'm sorry, it's actually Bill Hollister and Randall Crown. But as Marvel's kind of way of parodying the 2008 election, we have a mayoral election in New York City that is taking a very, very high-profile seat in the Amazing Spider-Man title at this point. So we have all of these subplots going on.
John, at the end of this issue, can I make a spoiler about who wins this election? Because literally, it's going to be hilarious as I say who wins this election after all the election that's thrown at us in this issue. When we actually get down who wins, you're going to be like, oh, come on!
No, the winner is the best thing that's ever happened to Spider-Man history in its 50-plus years.
Well, that's what I mean, though. You sit for all this crap to get to that ending of who is the mayor, and it's like, Well, what the fuck did we waste it on this year for?
It was not a year wasted. It was a year well spent on suspenseful drama. All right.
Yeah, we had a freaking supervillains talking about your right as an American citizen to vote. Because that's what supervillains do. You know the guys who are arrested and ex-cons, meaning they can't vote? Yeah, guess what? They're lecturing us about voting.
Yes, because, you know, when you go to prison, there are certain things you're no longer able to do because you're in prison. I don't know if anyone's ever taught you viewers that, but just in case the educational system may or may not have failed you, yeah, there are some things that are revoked when you go to prison. I really shouldn't bash the educational system because I'm going to be entering it within the next 5 to 10 years. All right. So we will be breaking this story up into 2 halves. We will be covering 3 issues at a time. James will be tackling the first 3 issues. I will be tackling the last 3 issues, mainly just because it evens it out and it makes it more efficient, and we're able to compartmentalize it in a way that works for us. So I will turn it over to James now with Amazing Spider-Man number 568, 569, and 570. Once again, written by Dan Slott, pencils by John Romita Jr., and all of the rest of the creative team acknowledged, except for I did realize I forgot to acknowledge executive editor Tom Brevoort. I did realize that I forgot to mention him in the credit section, so shout out to him as well.
He was executive editor or whatever it was during the first year of Brand New Day. That's why he was doing most of the promotion for it, where he had most of his Twitter comments that have now gone down in infamy in the fandom for some of the stuff he has said.
Yes, let that be a true example, children, of social media. It's out there forever, and it will never go away. So
you don't tell your audience to shut up and take their medicine when they're complaining about an issue.
We'll use this opportunity. We'll turn this into an educational opportunity for any of our younger viewers who may or may not be watching this and who probably aren't watching this. Yeah, don't post anything on the internet that you wouldn't want to look back on in 5 years and say, wow, okay, that was actually good. If you're not able to think, okay, that was a positive thing to say, you probably shouldn't post it on the internet.
No, he thinks of it as a positive, like most Marvel does. I think they looked at it as, yeah, you told our customers.
No comment. All right, James, why don't you dive into the recap of Amazing Spider-Man number 568? Just want to show off this pretty nice cover here. Penciled by John Romita Jr. himself. What the heck? I'll just show the trade cover. Yep, it's Spider-Man ripping off his shirt to show the Thunderbolts Venom suit underneath, even though he's not a member of the Thunderbolts at all. But whatever,
and they're trying with black suit at all in this whole arc.
Probably just trying to cash in on Spider-Man 3, even though it was a year ago at this point. But still,
that's one of the reasons why I chose to get the variant, because the variant was literally the same price as the Alex Ross cover. And I chose that mainly because I thought the first cover was so ugly. I'm like, yeah, I'll take an awesome Green Goblin Alex Ross cover over that any day.
I don't know. I like the JR cover for this, but go ahead, James. What happens in the first 3 issues of this?
Well, basically, to sum up some of the backstory, like you did, yeah, you got 2 ways of looking at this. Here, you have the Dan Slott point of view, which was he knew that in the next coming months, Bendis was going to have exclusive rights on Green Goblin, even though Dan Slott said the Spider-Man writer team was constantly trying to make sure he stayed in the Spider-Man books during Dark Reign and all that stuff that happens. But Bendis had a big kibosh on it. No, it's an Avenger villain. He's an Avengers villain now. So this was Dan Slott quickly getting in a Green Goblin story and real quickly before that happens, and that's pretty much what it is. And it's also the way how I personally look at it, kind of like the Swan Song when you think about it. Because if he was leaving Spider-Man becoming an Avengers villain, even though Spider-Man is an Avenger, so he would still be relevant, but whatever. You know what I mean, though? It's like, while he's leaving it, this is kind of like his swan song, like goodbye to the Spider-Man books for a while.
Until American Son.
Yeah. Basically, the story starts with Peter Parker, age 15, getting bit by a radioactive spider. Wait, you heard this before? Tough luck. This is how the issue begins. I had that literally written down that way.
I have a feeling that I'm having a bit of deja vu here.
It goes over the origin, and then it goes over, all the villains, all his classic villains. Like, hey, look, there's Scorpion and Matt Gargan's Venom. Unless that's supposed to be Eddie Brock's Venom, I don't know, but fuck it.
It's looking like Venom did in the Mark Millar Marvel Knights run.
Yeah, so you got the floating heads of guilt of, oh, here's Betty, and here's Flash, and here's Gwen, and then here's, you know, Captain Stacy, and here's Aunt May, and there's Robbie, and then there's some other person in the background who I can't even tell who that is. I think it's supposed to be Felicia Hardy, but don't quote me on it. And then you got the villains, and they're floating heads of guilt because fuck it. With an actually pretty cool, awesome photo of the Green Goblin, I must say, with no pupils on his eyes. That's actually pretty creepy. And then it shows him selling photos to Jonah and being all like, I'm mad because I sold photos to Jonah. And then it's like, hey, that's actually a great drama of a young Peter Parker and working in industry. And then you got him looking like oh, I got fired. Poor me. As we cut to the modern day era, as he just got fired from Dexter Bennett. And then it shows him at his apartment, and then his roommate, Finn Gonzalez, is saying, get off your ass and get a job or else I'm kicking you out. And then you got Harry Osborn saying that he can't give Peter Parker a job. Enough with these problems. We get it, Marvel. He has problems. He's fired. He's a lazy do-nothing on the couch that won't pay rent. Harry won't give him a job. We get it. He can't get a date with Carly. We get it.
And then you got
the new villains, and he's all like bragging about him. Oh, go on, John.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, the reason he can't get a job is because he's too busy as Spider-Man.
And then you got him bringing up all his new villains, and then he's all like, oh, all my great new rogues gallery, and only one of them stuck. My great new rogues gallery, and I repeat, only one has stayed.
You're talking about Freak, right?
No, I was talking about Paper Doll.
Oh,
remember her from her one arc?
I actually kind of like that story.
And then her second appearance, where she told the girl who made out with Peter Parker in the first arc to get a life because it's irony. That the celebrity stalker who wanted to kill Mary Jane because she thought that she was stealing her boyfriend, who was a celebrity who didn't even know this girl existed. Yeah, remember that? She told that girl who was making out with Peter Parker to get a life. What a memorable supervillain that was. And then he brings up, and then my greatest of all my new villains is Menace, because of course we got to promote Menace because it's a goblin and a goblin mystery. We haven't seen this already with the Green Goblin and Hobgoblin. We have to sit through this a third fucking time.
Oh, this is at least time number 4. You've got, like...
And I love it how Peter calls it out, too, in this. Where his first quip is like, I fought for like 20 Green Goblins and like 5 Hobgoblins, a Demo Goblin, a Gray Goblin. I think he even says like multicolored goblins, and he's all like, he's calling out all the goblins that's been around over the years. That's actually a pretty cool moment.
And I will say, just to interrupt your recap here, I'm sorry, but there is a funny moment where Spider-Man comes in, just as he comes in to fight Menace, he says, "Giant spider web. Who do you think, Einstein?" See, this is why they keep talking about a no villain left behind program. For anyone who knows anything about George W. Bush's presidential history with his No Child Left Behind Act.
Yeah, like we said, this is the old 8 election, so Bush is still very common right now.
Yeah.
So Peter's all like, yeah, like John says, Peter shows up and he starts quipping and fighting Menace because Menace has the line of, "A web? Who dares interfere in my evil scheme?" And like John said, he's like, Spider-Man. Who do you think? So seriously, not be quipping. Like, seriously, do you got problems that you don't realize that a web might be Spider-Man in the Marvel universe? And then he says the line, and I'm just going to repeat this. It's just quoted by line by line. If I can pull up my actual comic here and flip to that page. You're just another goblin, aren't you? And that's getting kind of old. I mean, come on. I already fought 4 Green Goblins, 2 Hobgoblins, 3 Fembot Goblins, Gray Goblin, Demo Goblin, Future Goblins, Fried Goblin, Shrimp Goblins, Goblins on Toast. And then Menace says, "Shut up," throws a Menace pumpkin bomb at him. And he's like, "Oh, you added M's to your pumpkin bombs. How cute." And then he shoots at him, and then it makes them explode on a wall. And then it's revealed that, oh, I'm hurt, and oh, I got to lift up big and heavy shit because I'm Spider-Man. I got to lift up big and heavy shit.
And we have to beat this into the ground.
And then this is Spider-Man in a post-9/11 world, so I got to have me sulking down, looking down at myself as the building is falling in front of me. And like literally there's a panel it's like literally right out of Ramita's 9/11 issue, it feels like. And then Peter sees all these people running out and they're speaking Chinese because it's a sweatshop. And he's wondering, wow, photos, I could take this into my job I don't have right now. And then he starts to web crawl away. And then for Harry to be standing there on top of a building looking all ominous because they want you to think that he's the red herring for who is the freaking menace. And then he's all like, hey, Peter, yeah, what's up? And Peter's like, not much. What's up with you? Hey, we're going to say plot things about how you should get a new job. But didn't we already say this in the whole epilogue at the beginning? Yeah, but you should do it again. It's awesome. And then Peter goes down to the front. Yeah. I'm Harry Osborn, who now is super cool because Jane Franco just died a year ago in the movie. Enjoy my return. And then you got, the front line, and you see, Ben Urich, and you find out basically everybody in the Bugle is now working there.
Except for Betty Brant.
Yeah, except for Betty, but everybody else is working there. And he's all like, hey, we have the whole Bugle staff working here. All we need is Betty Brant, and we'll have everybody. And then Peter's like, well, I hope that means I got the job. Oh, hey, it's Peter, and he's selling us Spider-Man photos because that's what he does. And then he's all like, wow, these are great photos. Yeah, I'll sell them to you. Okay, here we go. And then the front line, which has always been kind of like a 10th newspaper of New York, is somehow pissing off the, what's his name, Crone, or whatever his name is, who's the older guy running for it, Crone. And he's all like mad about it. He's like, this sucks. That one paper who nobody ever reads in the town had one bad article about me. Norman Osborn, you go after Spider-Man for me. That's literally it. And then Norman shows up, and he's all like, yeah, I'm back in your political campaign because I'm Norman Osborn. I'm badass. Then he gets the Thunderbolts in line, and he's like, we're going after New York to get a special hero. And then she's like, special hero in New York, who's that? And then Venom's eating a Spider-Man dummy like, who do you think? And then we go back to the and then Crone, and then is Crone, whatever the fuck you pronounce his name, I don't even care, is like getting these great headlines from the DB because they're the main sponsor to him, and they're making propaganda all about how great he is because Dexter Bennett's an asshole and we're supposed to hate him more than Norman. I mean, hate him more than Jonah because fuck it, he bought the Bugle from Jonah. That's literally it. He's an asshole. He can't remember people's names, and he bought the Bugle from Jonah. Oh, and he had one evil line one time that said, the people don't even realize why I really bought this place and what I'm really doing here. And that plot was never mentioned again. And then you go to the Feast Center, and you got Aunt May there with Betty Brant, and they're talking about how great Charity is because it makes that one guy look good. And then Eddie Brock is all like sickly and about to die. So negative, Mr. Martin touches him, and somehow his negative powers cure cancer because that's how it fucking works in the Marvel Universe.
Not even Reed Richards can cure cancer, but Martin Lee can do it with one touch.
You got the touch. Do, do, do. You got the power. I'm an evil negative Chinese man. Dun, dun, dun.
Stan Bush is on this podcast.
And then Peter gets attacked by these guys. And he's like, thanks to my spider ability, I'm able to dodge them, but I should let them take me in anyways because then they'll wonder why Peter Parker is so easy to take them down. And then, of course, you get the red herring of all fuck you cliffhanger red herrings. Peter says, no, you. And then Goblin's like, and then Norman's like sitting on his couch like, hello, Parker. And of course, as you're thinking, he knows! Somehow Norman knows! This is going to be so awesome! And now for the backup issue, it's Eddie Brock as Oscorp with the Star Trek logo on the background because fuck it. And then they're all like, yeah, you're cured of cancer. And then Eddie is having these evil, delusional thoughts of killing her with venom powers for whatever reason. And she's like, yeah, you're cured. Then he goes back to the Feast Center, and then he's seeing images of the green as Venom as he eats stuff. It's a Goblin issue, so I got goblins on my brain. And then he's imagining he's going to kill people, and he doesn't do it, but he beats a guy to a bloody pulp, and then he doesn't do it, and he realizes that it means he wants to be a good guy, but the ghost of Venom is still hiding him because Spider-Man 3.
And then we move on to Amazing Spider-Man 569.
Yeah, then we go on to the next issue. And like I said, remember that great cliffhanger where it makes you think, oh my God, Norman still knows? Turns out, now if I could do a wrestling meme, everybody pull your Dean Ambrose and say, nope.
Because the first panel of the
he just wants to know. He just wants to know where Spider-Man is because Peter Parker has to know because he's a photographer who takes photos of Spider-Man. Of course. Oh my God, this is where Brand New Day starts to really lose me. Like literally, this was it. You go to the first arc with classic Spider-Man villains, and then this is what you get. There is no literal personal vendetta between them two because literally him and Venom don't remember now. So they're just random villains. That's what it feels like. They're random villains. There's no consequences to the scene because we're going to destroy your apartment because we think you know who Spider-Man is. Because we remember something about you and Spider-Man's secret identity. We just can't connect the fucking dots so that means that you're Spider-Man. Oh my God. Literally, that's all this conversation is. It's selling the part that they don't remember. And then you got the other really super fucking red herring is Peter's inner monologue. Ah, that's right. He doesn't remember anymore. Nobody remembers. Everything we did is still up and up. I'm safe. Because you know what the fans are going to think he's talking about, right? He's talking about One More Day. Dean Ambrose again. Nope. He's talking about Omit. Something that they will not tackle till another fucking year.
He's talking about Stephen Strange, Reed Richards, and Tony Stark.
But here's the point that one of the biggest complaints about Brand New Day. A story that should have happened in the beginning to explain shit. For some reason, they would hold off for a year or two, and that was Omit. Like, Omit was like the last arc before the whole run ended. It was 3 years later we finally figured out what the fuck was going on. And here he's talking about it here just to get hate because when he says everything we did is still on the up and up, makes fans think that Peter remembers the deal with Mephisto. That was the whole goddamn reason why they didn't reveal the mind block until a year later and then explain what happened with the mind block 2 years later. And then you got Peter having a photo of him, Harry, Gwen, and MJ, and Venom destroys it because he goes, I remember you, Parker. You took the photos of Spider-Man, so we're going to take one of yours. Again, we don't remember why the fuck we remember that shit, but we remember it. Oh my God. And then they leave, the apartment all ruined, and literally seconds later, Venry shows up, not even noticing Norman Osborn and the Venom and all these supervillains, and he thinks Peter ruined the house. Because curse that Parker luck, because you can't see fucking supervillains walking down your small hallway, literally right when you're walking in.
It's not really like, it's not a big apartment building. I don't think there are that many stairwells that he would have missed them.
I mean, seriously, it's just there to sell the Parker luck. Funny story, Parker. Clean the mess up. They just left the house 2 seconds ago. How did you not fucking see? Oh, this is the worst issue of this whole arc. I'm saying that right now. And then you got Eddie being all happy because he's cured of cancer, and we got more of Martin talking like, obviously, like he's Mr. Negative, but nobody catches on because everybody's fucking morons now with mind blocks. Then you got Norman Osborn being given the key to the city, which is called out brilliantly by fucking so shitty and not make no sense to us. I'm sorry, I just gotta laugh for a second. Because Philly Uric calls it out. He's the Green Goblin. We arrested him. How the fuck is he getting the key to the city by a guy who's not even mayor yet? And everybody's like this. What the fuck's going on here? He's calling it out.
James, let me just explain this to you. Money is the main thing in today's world. If Norman Osborn has the money to get anything, like, in all honesty, there is no such thing as like righteousness when money is involved.
It's to set up Dark Reign. That's all this is, John.
I know. It's like
they weren't thinking of this being a big moral moment where you're supposed to think about it. It was to set up Dark Reign that started like a month later.
But it's like
then you got the line from Phil Uric that takes the cake. He's like, somebody caused magic to make everybody forget about it. Just get it one more day. Literally, that's the third get it one more day moment we have got in this arc. Remember, this is the time where Marvel's trying to tell you, oh, you'll forget about the anger by the summer. And here's 3 times they brought it up.
But where does Norman Osborn go to celebrate his new acquisition of the key to the city?
Oh yeah, here goes the best part. Where does he go? Well, to make fun of his son Harry Osborn, like he always does. Harry's like, yeah, I got my own business now. Don't you love me? No, I'm gonna sulk and be mad and have evil green eyes because it makes you think I'm menace. Literally, that's all it is. Dad, aren't you proud of me? Nope. Evil goblin eyes, red herring, bye. Moving on. Then we go back to Osborn Mansion, and then they're all looking for Spider-Man, and then here comes the line of the comic. And there's a lot of lines in the comic, but this is the one that just takes the cake, and John knows what I'm talking about. We can do one better, Osborn. We've been in his head. We've been in his soul. We know everything about that meat bag from inside and out. If he's out there, we'll find him because we know everything there is about him. We don't remember who the fuck he is or what he looks like, but we remember everything about him.
Oh man, this is just like this is what happens when we try to deal with psychic mind block stuff like it's not even there.
But nobody's dealing with it. There should be a panel where Norman or Venom like, why don't we remember who he is? There's like little hints of it, but there's nothing right out that says, God, why don't we remember? Why doesn't Venom just say here, I remember everything, but for some reason I can't remember who he is. What the fuck's going on here? That would actually continue the storyline. No, we got Venom saying a line that makes Venom, Matt Cargan's Venom, granted, but it makes Venom sound like a fucking dumbass.
Well, okay.
Everything you can know about somebody except who the fuck he is.
In fairness, that's completely in character for Matt Gargan to be stupid.
But the symbiote, you think because the living symbiote was like bonded to Peter at the time that would be somehow to bypass the mind block because it's counted as part of Peter Parker. You think that would have something about it, but nope.
All right,
and then Peter breaks into Oscorp, and then he shines the light on him, and then Spider-Man's under arrest, and he swings away, and then Venom attacks, the Feast Center to go after Eddie, and then somehow Negative's cancer curing powers bonds with part of the symbiote and creates anti-venom, and there you go. That's the end of the issue. Like literally.
Then we move on.
Before we go to issue 3, can I just face palm for a second, John?
Yeah, I think James needs to like take a breath, just calm down, buddy. Just like
this issue, I like this arc, but that has to be one of the worst issues of Spider-Man I have ever read, and that's saying something when you see me on this podcast.
Ooh, okay, shots fired.
It's
okay,
bad
James.
because how dumb they make every character. It's like this is the problem that a lot of people have with Dan Slott's writing. This is see, get it, and it was like shoved down our throats. They don't remember. Then why the hell did you have Venom brag about remembering everything? Why do you have this scene where Norman's getting the key to the city from a guy who's not even mayor yet?
Oh, I just actually explained that to you, but whatever.
But the guy's not mayor. He wouldn't have power to do that, you would think.
I don't know. It's just money trumps all, dude.
Oh, it's just, yeah, that issue just gets to me. And then you have Peter saying, I have priorities. That would separate me from the Thunderbolts. I'm not just after the bad guys. I have priorities. I got to get to the Feast Center to save Aunt May. Why the fuck am I talking like Frank Miller? And then you got an anti-Venom versus not anti-Venom. Positive Venom, I guess you can call him, whatever the hell.
Pro-Venom?
No, I wouldn't say pro-Venom because Gargan. Gargan was not a pro at anything. Let's admit it.
Yeah, okay. Want to be Venom?
Aunt May saving a kid, and she's all like yelling at Eddie Brock, calling him Edward Brock like he's a fucking child. And then she's all like, how that kid could have got hurt? And then, of course, Eddie Brock acts like, classic lethal protector Eddie Brock and goes, innocence, I'm sorry, I wasn't. And then he gets punched, and he says, and then Venom makes a racial joke. Even I get it, the symbiote's black, but Gargan's white. and he makes a joke calling him Whitey.
I didn't take that as racial at all.
I think that's what they're going for. I think they're going for that. And then Peter, like, of course, goes, "What? Eddie's a new symbiote? There's a new symbiote? Oh, just my luck." And then he's all like, "Oh, I'm gonna beat up the new symbiote." And then Gargan's like, "No, this is between me and Eddie." And he's like, Eddie, Brock? Oh God, we're tying in another Spider-Man 3 reference in this comic. And then now we got the other problem with Romita art is the goddamn super gigantic fang claw hands he gives Venom. And then you have Norman, with Bullseye. Then you got Menace with an evil look in his eye, blowing up a building and attacking Hollister and saying, "Finish it!" What? Finish it! Look, that's what it reminds me of Spider-Man 1.
Yes.
And then you got, I guess that's supposed to be like a hint that he's that he is technically she, and because he's like he's looking in the eyes of the knocked out Hollister, and he's like, "What have I done?" kind of moment, and leaves. And then you got more of the Venoms fighting, and then Norman remembers the first time he fought Spider-Man with the Thunderbolts, and he remembers that, but he doesn't remember who the fuck was wearing the mask. But okay, whatever. He remembers when he hits Spider-Man over the head with a rock, but he doesn't remember who he is.
Yes, he remembers James's favorite issue.
Hey, I like issue 14. That's classic C. Dicko cheese. That's Silver Ace cheese from Stanley at its finest. Let's admit that. The Green Goblin's first plan to finish Spider-Man in Hollywood with a rock. Come on, that's just brilliant.
That's very fitting of the character he related to.
Dr. Doom had a time travel storyline that revealed that Ben Grimm was Blackbeard.
That's scary, but also amazing.
That was the first Dr. Doom story. And then, then we got more of the Venoms fighting, and then you got the front line talking about the sweatshop, and then you got more of the Venoms fighting, and then you got Norman Osborn with some really shitty artwork for his hair. He's like bald, and Menace shows up, and he's like, "So, whose little boy are you? Get it? Because remember, since past, we wanted to sell that memory for you."
All right, so that concludes the first.
Line. So whose little boy are you supposed to be? It's like, get it? Remember since past?
Well, that concludes the first 3 issues of this story. So, James, why don't you go ahead and give us...
I love Romita, but god damn it, why is Norman half bald here?
Why don't you give us your thoughts on these first 3 issues in general? Why don't you give us things you like, things you didn't like, all that good stuff?
I'll be honest, before we went live on the air, going by nostalgic memories of when the story first came out, I really liked it. But now rereading it, it doesn't hold up.
Oh.
Like, I'll give it a thumbs minus because there's not really anything bad. It's just the really, really dumb moments that just you can't ignore them because it's shoved in your face. It's like hand-fisted. You know what I mean? You can't escape these dumb lines like, "Whose son are you?" Get what we're hinting at? It's just these issues. You got the origin recap because I get it, they're trying for new readers, but I thought 6 months ago when you rebooted with Brand New Day was supposed to bring in new readers. Well, obviously not if you're once again redoing the origin for new readers.
At this point, they'd had 3 movies that had probably tackled the origin. Why can't, like, everyone and their uncle knew who Spider-Man was at that point? Why do we need to keep retelling this story?
It just doesn't fit. Literally, the only thing I could think of is to sell the fact that this is supposed to be like the new Romita age. Like, we're having John Romita Jr. coming in to do this arc. He's going to sell the point that this is the new Romita era, kind of, the new golden age of Spider-Man, but it's having these parallels to the past, which aren't technically parallels because it's bringing up all the complaints people have with One More Day. Oh, Peter's a loser. He can't pay rent. Oh, Peter's a loser. He can't get a job. Peter's a loser. His friends won't even give him a job to pay rent.
I don't think James likes these issues very much.
And like I said, it's sad because I used to like these issues, and they just don't hold up now that I actually reread them.
All right, James. Do you have anything?
I'll admit, most of my hate for this now is coming from issue 2, because of just that goddamn dumbass Green Goblin and Venom thing about them not remembering. It's like, why even do the story? Because there is literally, I read this and there felt like there was no consequences. Because Peter's all like, whew, they don't remember and they won't kill mindless Peter Parker. Good thing I don't got to worry about anything now, like them going after my family. You just took everything that people liked about Green Goblin and Venom storylines, and you erased it. And one of the reasons that I don't think Marvel ever outright said that this is why, but I've always kind of felt like it was because I get it, Norman's going to be in power here soon, and you don't want him to have all the power of the U.S. government to come after the Parkers with the knowledge of who they are. I get why that might be one of the reasons you won't, because the end game would obviously be him just killing them all or arresting Peter. And I get that. But it's like, well, then this just shows how bad the writing is. If you have to literally do dumb things like this to explain why he's not going after them. Because
is there anything
Venom destroyed a photo. That's all he can do to.
Is there anything you liked in these issues, James?
The art, except when you get to that final panel where Norman's half bald for whatever reason. But the art's actually pretty good. But then again, I have, except for the 90s, it's really hard to find really bad John Romita Jr. art.
All right, so you give these issues a thumb sideways. You're not too keen on all of them?
It's not because they're already bad. It's just the dialogue and then issue 2 that brings it down. Because it really does feel hand-fisted when you get to that. So when you get to that final page, Norman showing up as Xehanort Goblin. Norman, I get it where it can make sense, but it just felt like, so whose son do you think you are now? And it felt like, you could have had a different line there where it's like, so another copycat or another wannabe goblin. It's like, what, did he think that freaking all the hobgoblins were related to him? Like, oh my God, did I fuck some fashion designer? Now she had, I fucked some fashion designer back in the 60s and then explained Roderick and the Kingsley twins. What?
Okay.
Is it going to be revealed that Phil Urich's a long-lost son of Norman Osborn to explain Phil having Green Goblin powers? Is that what you're trying to do, Marvel?
What's the explanation for Jason Philip Macendale? I can't wait for that one.
Well, I can see that one. I can see that one being Norman's. But Norman dropped him on his head when he was a baby.
Just dropped him on his
Wait. Jason Philip Macendale in the TV show is super rich. Where did he get that money for? Could it be an inheritance from Norman?
Ooh. All right. I will go into my thoughts on the 3 issues because we just want to move this along here. Personally, I actually kind of like these 3 issues. I thought they were solid enough comics. My biggest pro from all of them is the gorgeous John Romita Jr. artwork accompanied by Klaus Janson, Dean White, and all them. It is just absolutely.
Oh, can I bring up my favorite moment real quickly? And I know this doesn't come to, I think, the final issue, but I still love it so much, and I still love it. Norman drinking out of the coffee when he's with Harry, and Harry's calling him out for all the Green Goblin shit, and the cup that Norman has is world's greatest dad. It's like the greatest sight gag in the history of Spider-Man. It's classic Harry and Norman yelling, screaming, mad at each other. Like, when you think the Osborns, this is what you get. I mean, Smallville writers said when they were making Lionel and Lex, they were basing on Harry and Norman. And this is classic it right there. And it's like Norman's he's smiling, drinking a cup that says world's best dad. It's just the greatest gag ever. Love it.
I do like the artwork by Romita, Jansen, and White. I think it's very attractive. I think it pops off the page, and I really like the overall style of it. I do think Peter Parker is actually generally pretty in character throughout most of this. I really see him as, he's acting like the way I think he would act. He's fulfilling the role that I think he would fill. So I think, in my opinion, he's pretty in character throughout most of this. I do think there is some clunky dialogues at points, sometimes during his inner monologue, sometimes during the origin, and a few of the quips with some of the villains don't always sit quite right with me. The voice just sounds a little bit off, but it wasn't really too bad. Most of the time, he felt pretty spot on. I thought Slott did a pretty good job with Peter in these 3 issues. I do have a few funny moments, like I pointed out with the no villain left behind thing. There's a lot of really funny stuff with just political bullshit in here. James actually pointed this out to me before we went on the air, and I can't believe this went over my head. I read this story. I've read this entire Brand New Day era. This all just went over my head. I never would have thought that what's his name? Hollister and Crown were meant to be Barack Obama and John McCain. I never
Hillary.
It's like I didn't even that just completely went over my head, and I felt so stupid when James pointed that out to me. I'm like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense, especially given the context of the time of this issue's publication. But yeah, I thought there was some pretty funny moments with political BS in here. Norman being given the key to the city, money taking power over everything, the no villain left behind act, all that stuff. I thought that was pretty funny. I like Peter racing in to save Aunt May. I thought that was pretty well done. I do have a problem with Eddie Brock. People just treating him like he's just some sick guy. Yeah, he's sick, but he's sick in the head because this guy. Do you know how much civilian blood this guy has on his hands? Like, have we forgotten all of his years as Venom? Why is May Parker just completely willing to just? Well, okay, this is May Parker.
Mephisto erased everybody's memory, John. We don't gotta explain it.
I was actually going to say this is May Parker, who believes that Otto Octavius is a decent person. So actually, I can kind of believe that.
Oh yeah, you can go with that too.
I will say that I did enjoy the anti-Venom versus Venom versus Spider-Man fight in issue 570. That was great, and I loved Spider-Man's line of referring to anti-Venom and Matt Gargan's Venom as salt and pepper, respectively. I thought that was gold. I loved that line from Spider-Man. Someone needs to frame that. That's great. I did think there was some pretty solid stuff with Norman Osborn throughout all of this. I know James pointed out his issues with it, but I didn't really mind it that much. I thought it was decent. I thought it was handled decently enough, and I actually did like the cliffhanger at the end of 570. So overall, I think I'm actually pretty positive towards these three issues. I think they're a pretty solid first half of the story. And I don't really have any major complaints against them apart from maybe the Eddie Brock stuff. So overall, I probably give these first three issues a thumbs up. I think Slott does a pretty good job with these issues, obviously, and the artists do a pretty good job visually telling the story as well. So overall, not many complaints for me. It's some clunky dialogue here and there, but overall, I think it's canceled out enough by the positives of the story to make it a positive reading experience. Now, we will move on to the final three issues, which I will be covering in the recap because, James obviously did the first half. Issue 571 starts off with Anti-Venom actually holding Spider-Man, and he's trying to basically purge any remaining symbiote or any just quote-unquote cancerous substances out of Spider-Man. But by doing that, he's actually taking away Spider-Man's powers by eradicating the radiation in his blood. Luckily enough, at this same moment, Norman Osborn is having a confrontation with Menace, who we won't mention who Menace is at this point because that's not going to be reviewed. That's not going to be revealed for another 10, 15 issues or so. But
I think we already spoiled it back when we did the second arc of Brand New Day, John. But still,
yeah, we probably spoiled it already on the previous podcast. But for the sake of this episode by itself, we won't discuss it. But I'm sure anyone who's listening to this or watching this has probably already read this story and probably read the succeeding stories after it. But
it's Dexter Bennett. It's Dexter Bennett. Menace. He's
Menace is Dexter Bennett.
Long lost son from time travel.
All right, but the Thunderbolts come in and manage to get Matt Gargan away from the situation because he was taken down by Anti-Venom in the previous issue. And this basically is Spider-Man's Saved by the Bell moment where he manages to get away from Eddie Brock. And the Thunderbolts try to take Brock down, but they find that the usual weaknesses that Venom had, such as Sonics and Fire, are not successful when combating Anti-Venom. And so they're not able to take him out, and they're also not able to release Bullseye, who is kind of like their wild card, because the access code to unlock him is only known by Norman, and Norman is currently battling Menace, so he's kind of out of the picture, as it were. So Spider-Man manages to get out of there and evade Songbird. Yes, that is actually a character's name, Songbird. Um, I honestly can't believe that. That's so just surreal to me. But comics. Anti-Venom manages to take out Radioactive Man. Radioactive Man. That sounds like an Imagine Dragon song. But Norman is actually
ripping off the '90s Spider-Man cartoon theme song. Just replace Spider-Man with Radioactive Man.
Yeah, Menace actually manages to defeat Norman because Norman pisses her off because he says, "I just want
her, John."
Yeah, I just want. He says, "I just want to get Spider-Man," and she's like, "You have all this power, all these resources, all this wealth, and you just want one guy? You're an idiot." And so, Norman's retort to that was, "Well, that was very educational." So Spider-Man's managed to get away from the Thunderbolts, and Norman regroups and gets away with them. But Eddie Brock is not far behind and manages to infiltrate their ship and blend in as one of the Thunderbolts crew. Meanwhile, Peter Parker manages to find some discarded clothes in the homeless shelter collection bin because his civilian clothes were left way across the city. And so he goes in there and checks on Aunt May as Peter Parker. Meanwhile, Harry Osborn is meeting up with Ben Urich. And I don't remember who this is. I think it's Sally Floyd. I don't know if I've gotten that name right. But he's met up with Ben Urich and Sally Floyd at the Red Cent Diner, and he's managing to turn over some financial transactions between Crown Industries and Oscorp that he found tucked away back when he was working at his dad's company. And they are proof that Crown had been dealing with human trafficking along with Oscorp. And so that's kind of tying into the whole Chinese sweatshop plot that's been going on throughout this arc. So Harry then goes over to visit his girlfriend Lily and her laid up father at the hospital because her father had been attacked by Menace in a previous issue. So meanwhile, Norman is working out some details of the attack on the Feast Center that had just occurred with his Thunderbolts team, and he says that he managed to pick up Spider-Man's camera that Spider-Man had webbed to the roof, like Spider-Man does to take automatic pictures of himself so he could sell it to the newspaper later. That was something I'd forgotten to mention in the recap.
Know that if he doesn't know who Peter Parker or Spider-Man.
Yes, but Norman manages to figure out how there is a little bit of a tracer hidden in the spider emblem right on Spider-Man's chest. And so he manages to reverse engineer that technology into kind of a way for bullets to always hit Spider-Man at this exact spot. And so every time they shoot Spider-Man or try to take him out, it'll hit right on target, which is actually something that comes up in the next issue. So Peter, Ben, and Betty, and Sally Floyd are all visiting the Feast homeless shelter to take a look at all of these Chinese sweatshop people that have come there looking for just a place to settle down, a place to try to pick up the pieces. And one of them mentions Oscorp, and Peter says, in any language, that means trouble. And so he goes off to talk to Harry and Lily at that point at the coffee bean. Meanwhile, Norman is deciding to dispatch the Thunderbolts to take out Spider-Man, while at the same time trying to figure out how to take out Anti-Venom while working on Matt Gargan as Venom. And this is the point where Freak comes back into the story, and Freak is kind of like their human guinea pig. It's kind of like the way for them to really figure out and synthesize the Anti-Venom combatant weapon. And just because Norman has to be shown as the crazy mofo that he is, he has to put on the Goblin mask because, remember, always wear protection. Safety first, kids.
Safety first. I'm going to wear a mask that gives me no protection probably whatsoever.
It's comics, James. Just roll with it. So we're at the coffee bean, and Peter's expressing his condolences to Lily and Harry, and he's trying to get Harry to talk, and he's trying to get some information out of them. But Harry, at that moment, receives a phone call from his father, and that is because the Thunderbolts have picked up Spider-Man's location as being at the coffee bean, but they don't know that it's Peter Parker. So they actually blow up the coffee bean. Harry and Lily run for it while Peter says, "Get her away from here. I'll go look for help." And Harry realizes, yeah, this guy, when he says he's going for help, he obviously means he's going to take pictures because he's trying to profit off of everyone else's pain. Because, psychic mind blocking, we can't figure out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, even though it's painfully obvious. So Spider-Man shows up on the scene, and he's not doing too well against the Thunderbolts crew. until Anti-Venom shows up and decides, I've been incognito long enough. It's time I stop these guys and prevent them from taking out Spider-Man. And so he informs Spider-Man of what's been happening and the weapon that they're using to combat him so easily. And so what Spider-Man does is he actually rips off the center of his shirt and basically exposes his bare chest, and he sticks it onto Bullseye. And so whenever anyone from the Thunderbolts fires their weapon at this point, it just keeps hitting Bullseye. And what does Spider-Man do? Because he's so clever, once that happens, he says, Bullseye, just because that's who Spider-Man is. He's just quipping all the time. So Anti-Venom leads Spider-Man to the Oscorp building, where Norman Osborn has managed to synthesize a cure for the Anti-Venom, I don't know if you'd call it a virus, but he's managed to get the Anti-Venom stuff out of Matt Gargan and managed to get the Venom symbiote back onto him. But until the Venom symbiote can get up to full power, he's given him an armor to help him go up against Brock a second time, and he's made him into the brand new Scorpion. And that ends issue 572. And as we move into 573 here, we're talking about the part where James mentioned earlier, which is the confrontation between Harry and Norman, where Norman actually has the world's greatest dad mug, which I didn't notice that when I was reading the story earlier. So I thought that was a pretty now that I'm seeing that, I think that's a pretty clever little touch to put in there. But Spider-Man and Anti-Venom managed to get to the Oscorp building, and they split up because another thing I didn't mention in this recap earlier is that because of what Anti-Venom was doing to Spider-Man a few issues ago, whenever the two are in close proximity to each other, Spider-Man's powers actually start to fade in and out a bit. And so Peter doesn't want to be too close to Eddie for fear of his weaknesses starting to come out.
John,
so they actually.
John, this is just for the visual podcast, but I just love Norman's smirk with the photo that clearly shows World's Greatest Dad Mode, and the smirk he has on his face. I just love it. Norman, you are a rotting bastard.
Yes, this is Norman Osborn to a T. I really like what Slott and Romita and all of them do with Norman in this issue. I think it's pretty spot on for him. So Spider-Man manages to break into the Oscorp building, or who we assume is Spider-Man. But when he encounters the Thunderbolts, it turns out that it's actually Anti-Venom in disguise. So Brock and Gargan start doing battle. Meanwhile, Spider-Man intervenes on the confrontation between Harry and Norman, and they actually start flying through walls, just going through wall after wall after wall until they stop in a room where Spider-Man discovers that Norman's been doing some illegal human experimentation. And so when Spider-Man questions him, he forces Norman to talk. But before anything can happen, the room starts to self-destruct, and they ultimately are forced to evacuate the building. Meanwhile, Brock and Gargan are still going at it, and so while Spider-Man is
John, you got it wrong. He says that Harry was the one who was doing the human testing.
Oh, I apologize. I was just completely going through. I'm sorry. I was just completely going through that and just went over my mind. That's what happens when I go through these issues too fast. Yes, it was actually Harry who was doing the illegal human experimentation. Thank you, James, for pointing that out. That's what happens when I get in the zone. Peter tries to get everyone out, including Anti-Venom and Scorpion. Luckily, mostly everyone manages to get out of the building. But what is the cover-up story that is used by Norman and Crown in their ultimate aftermath of this? That the Spider Tracer killer managed to go down in the wreckage of the building, and so Spider-Man is no more. And the promise that Norman Osborn made to the people to take Spider-Man out has been fulfilled. Obviously, that's not. Obviously, those rumors are greatly exaggerated. The issue ends with Harry, Lily, and Peter trying to go through the wreck of the Osborn office, because that is the only room that's left standing in the entire building. Wow, that's a plot contrivance if I've ever seen it. So while Harry steps out of the room, Lily's like, "Wow, Peter, you're here. And you know what? You're the good one." And throughout these last few days, with all the craziness going on, seeing Harry's father,
you forgot. You missed the other really important thing. Right before Peter grabs a book to a secret lever, she pulls him.
Yes, that will come into play in a future storyline. But seeing Harry's father, seeing what Harry's like around his father, well, sometimes I feel like I chose the wrong guy. And she kisses him, and Peter Parker, in his classic Peter Parker sense, can't can't form a sentence after being kissed by a girl, because Peter Parker doesn't get kissed by girls very often because he's Peter Parker.
Well, I took it more of like shocked and then getting kissed by the girl. It's like it's just more of a shock of, oh my god, this is Harry's girlfriend, get off me kind of thing. Because Peter's like, I'm not breaking bro code. Me and Harry aren't going down this road again like we did with Mary Jane in the college years. No, sorry, lady. No, we're not. I'm not breaking bro code. That's like literally what it is to me.
Yeah, so at the end of this issue, Martin Lee is kind of in a bad mood, and he goes off and he's trying to be alone. And Aunt May says, I've never seen him like that. I've never seen him so angry. And one janitor comes up to her and says, it's okay, Mrs. Parker, don't worry. You haven't been here that long. He gets like that from time to time. I had no idea. And so the issue ends with Eddie Brock saying that he must get rid of all of the illness and all the plague in this city. From now on, I am the anti-venom. And that concludes issue 573 of Amazing Spider-Man, and then also concludes the not the Brand New Day storyline, the New Ways to Die storyline. Sorry, my throat's getting a little dry here. I will just go through my thoughts very quickly on these 3 issues. I didn't think these issues were quite as strong as the previous 3. I thought they were a little bit of a step below, but I still liked them well enough.
Above the first 3.
Yeah, this is where me and James really show our opposite sides on this podcast. I did think the cliffhanger at the end of 571 was kind of stupid. I just it wasn't the kind of cliffhanger that grabbed me so much. It was just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah. It wasn't a cliffhanger that made me really want to go out and buy the next issue immediately, probably because I was reading this in trade and could just turn the page and see what happened immediately. So I guess that kind of completely.
You're in the 3 times a month thing, so John, like literally the next week was the new issue, so you weren't really waiting for that long for the next issue.
Yeah, but it's just like I didn't think the whole the spider chest thing with Bullseye, trying to get the bullets to just hit right on his chest and just hit him right there. They're like, oh, this is going to be our secret weapon. I didn't think that was the best cliffhanger. I don't know. It just didn't grab me dramatically enough, so I didn't think that was all good. But something I did like was the actual fight sequence where they did implement that new weapon. While the cliffhanger didn't grab me so much, the actual action did. The real action did actually grab me quite a bit. I thought the fight sequence was pretty engaging, pretty solid art once again by Romita Jansen and White on pencils, inks, and colors respectively. I thought that was pretty solid. I liked Peter and Eddie teaming up, and I liked, as much as I made fun of it in the recap, I did like Peter saying Bullseye after they managed to take that character down. I thought that was pretty good. I thought that was something that classic Peter Parker would do. Once again, showing that I think Slott understands the character definitely in this issue, at least understands the character in the way that he fits my personal view of him. Of course, everyone's personal view of Peter Parker can change from person to person. Something else I liked in these 3 issues, I thought Norman Osborn was just absolutely spot on throughout all of these issues. He's just freaking insane. I love him for it. It's absolutely nuts what he's doing. And that moment where he puts on the goblin mask and it's just like, always wear protection, he's just nuts. He's just a complete psycho. And he's just looking for any excuse to wear that stupid costume. And I really like that. And plus, going back to the artwork again, I think Romita and the team do a really good job with the Green Goblin in this story. He looks absolutely fantastic. I really like that. I also really do like the confrontation between Harry and Norman, like James said. I don't really think there's anything more I can add to that. The World's Greatest Dad mug is classic, which I didn't even notice when I was first reading the story. And plus, there's just a lot of, there's a lot of bad blood between them, so they're trying to air some of those grievances out. I didn't really see the point in making Gargan another Scorpion just to take that away 1 issue later. I thought that was like, okay, we're just going to throw this in here, but it's not really going to have any effect. I thought that was kind of pointless. I didn't really like that so much. The ending with the building crumbling, whatever. Didn't really have an effect on me one way or another. There was some clunky dialogue during the evacuation scene that I wasn't a fan of. Like Spider-Man saying, long time no try to lock me up for a crime I didn't commit to the Thunderbolts, kind of his version of long time no see. I didn't really think that was a very good line. There was just some stuff in here that really didn't jive with my natural voice for Spider-Man in my head, so that was a little bit of a takeaway from me. The ending with Lily kissing Peter, whatever. We'll see where that goes in future storylines. That didn't really affect me all that much. I didn't really like the fact that Peter couldn't form a sentence right after it. To me, it just jived with the whole Brand New Day direction that sometimes I'm not fond of. It's a little bit iffy when it's executed either well or poorly. So when we're dealing with that, I'm kind of neutral on that. Overall, I think I am still pretty positive towards these 3 issues. I will give them thumbs up. I think the final action sequence between Spider-Man and the Goblin is fairly engaging. Once again, pretty solid writing and artwork from Slott and the team there. There's not really much else for me to say on these 3 issues, to be honest. I think it's a solid concluding half of the story. And overall, I think this is a solid 6-issue story in and of itself. Is it one of the best in Spider-Man's history? I don't think I would consider it to be one of those, but I think overall it's a decent enough read, and I think it's worth, let's see, how much does this trade cost? $19.99 retail price here in the United States. I think the trade is worth it. I think it's a solid read. I think it's an enjoyable read. I will give the arc overall a thumbs up. And overall, I'd recommend this arc if you're a Spider-Man fan. So, James, why don't you give your thoughts on these last 3 issues and the arc and this whole 6-issue arc as a whole?
All right, I'll begin with bringing up the really awesome moments. Not much. The arc's really good in these 3 issues. The final fights is where it starts to get good. You got the Bullseye stuff. I didn't really like it, the filler, because I felt like the main meat and potatoes of the storyline was Norman and Peter. So that kind of stuff kind of felt like, it was kind of like dragging. It's like the wrestling match where they purposely put 2 guys that aren't really that popular on in between the 2 big fights, and that's what that felt like. It felt like, oh, here he is with Bullseye, and we take away that whole Bullseye being able to track Spider-Man for the Spider logo, and we dealt with that, and okay, Bullseye got taken out by guns, and Peter made a fun about it. Okay, now we're gonna get to the main meat and potatoes. And when you get to the main meat and potatoes in this, it's a really good comic. When you get to the fight between Peter and Harry, Peter Norman with Harry watching it. I love Harry and Norman's dialogue. It's very out of the Raimi movies, I think, like a little bit more than something that how it was in the comics. Where in the comics, but Dad, why don't you show any attention to me? Shut up, Harry. This is more them fighting back and forth, which is more kind of what happened in the Ramita movies and the Mark Webb movie now, kind of. They're more kind of modern day, I guess, Harry and Norman relationship. You got that here. I love the part in the final issue where Norman, where Peter's, when the glider is shoving Norman's head through all the walls of Osgard, and he's like, stop it, you'll cave in my skull. And he's like, why? Peter outright says, why? It's not going to kill you. You came back from worse. I can do this as long as I want it. You're not going to die from this. And, of course, he eventually does stop when he finds all the humans being chained up to lab machines. And then you got the Lily Hollister, Peter Parker makeout scene, which I just find funny because I just think it's Peter. When you see his eyes bug out, he's saying, no, this can't happen again. The last time this happened, Harry went nuts and became a goblin. No, lady, no. To bring up now some of my cons, again, that goddamn Norman Osborn second mind block can't figure out what the fuck's going on. And you got that when I made that joke about John. How does he know this if he wasn't it? I was hoping that John would set up the punchline, in which John would explain it. But I guess they went over John's head or whatever. Norman outright says in the issue, now I found out the secret between Spider-Man and these photos and why Peter Parker's able to get all these great photos. Parker's just the front man. He's making the money. Spider-Man's doing all the work. What? What?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do apologize. My recap was a little bit rushed. That's just what happens when I'm trying to deal with 3 issues at once. I'm trying to process things, and I just get in the zone. I do apologize for that if that wasn't the best recap.
Comic. Like, literally, I now know the secrets of Peter Parker and the photos he takes of Spider-Man. He's the front who gets all the money while Spider-Man does all the work.
Are we talking about Norman Osborn here, or are we talking about Frederick Foswell back in the Ramita era?
I get it. The mind block will not make you put 2 and 2 together until you see him on math. But that doesn't even make sense.
Okay, at least this excuse makes more sense than the supposed excuse for the Jackal that I've always seen, where he had to clone Spider-Man, put a costume on him, and then take the costume off. No, I don't know.
John, I don't think he went that far. I think he just says, I have Spider-Man's DNA. He recloned Peter Parker. Oh, it's Peter Parker. I don't think he had to literally have a clone with a suit on.
I don't like. That's just what I've heard. I don't know if that's canon or not. If that actually happened in the comic, but that idea is actually pretty funny to me.
Speculation is the reason why he knows is because he can just take off the mask. I think he makes a joke of that in Spider. He goes, "Oh, Peter, no matter how many times you make people forget who you stick your identity, all I have to do is clone you again and take off the mask." But I don't think he literally means that he cloned a guy with a suit on. I mean, when you see the Clone Saga, anytime a clone comes out, they're butt naked.
Okay. So
on the clothes, John. He didn't just randomly call to Peter Parker, put the mask on him to take it off.
Okay, I've got that visual in my head. Okay, Slott, since you're still writing Amazing Spider-Man, the next arc of Volume 4, that's what it needs to be.
I hope the next arc, because we know that Harry and Norman are coming back sometime. I hope the next arc after the Regent is so badly. I hope it's going to be Norman free finding out. Because it's getting ridiculous now that it's almost 10 years later and Norman still can't put two and together again. He has no say in the government. There's no excuse for him not to know.
All right, James, what else are you thinking about this particular storyline that we're reviewing tonight?
You basically hit all the high points. It's a lot of fighting. Let's call it spade a spade. You got Norman figuring out that who Menace is somehow by the fight, even though he only spent 5 minutes with Lily and she didn't even say one word. But he figured it out. He's like, "Oh, now I know who you are." I can't remember what the exact line is, but it's something like, "Oh, now I know who it is," or something like that.
Well, that was educational.
Oh yeah, that's what it is. But it's like he put two together. Okay, vaguely she's talking about power, and we know that was her motivation to get power for her father. But what? That's how Norman figures it out. He can figure out who fucking. This was literally my thought in between this. He could figure out who Menace was by, that vague line by somebody he only met one time before then for 5 minutes, but he can't put two together who Spider-Man is in the story arc. Because I get now the mind block, that's why, but still, it always rubbed me the wrong way. That's that part. The next issue, it's great. I love the Norman parts with him in the mask. That's where it takes the cake. You got Harry's company blowing up and explaining Spider-Man, but again, that's just red herring for him being Menace. That's all that is. That's his motivation to be Menace, even though Menace has been around already. But the part that I really do love are the Norman Green Goblin moments. Freak, literally, who gives a shit about Freak? Nobody gave a shit about Freak when his first issue came out, so why did they give a damn about him now?
Freak is probably like one of the least memorable villains from Brand New Day for me.
No, I would go Paper Doll. Paper Doll above Freak, but Freak is like a close second. Freak was
Paper Doll. No, don't you go bashing Paper Doll. Paper Doll is life.
John, did you even read her arc?
Yes, I've read her arc multiple times. You gotta love Paper Doll.
I can't tell if that's sarcasm or you telling the truth right now because I lost all. If you really like Paper Doll as a villain, I got a house on Mars I could sell you, John. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, James. I think James may have just lost all respect for me, but I am going to clarify this. That was sarcasm.
No, I know it was sarcasm, John. I was like making it look like you actually didn't think that way. No, but the Norman parts are really awesome. Like when he puts the mask on and he calls Harry, and you know that embarrassing moment we all have where your dad does something that's really embarrassing, and your face palm like, "Oh my God, Dad, you're not seriously doing that right now," or "Oh God, Dad," we all have that moment with our dads, right? Harry has that moment with his dad wearing the fucking goblin mask. He's like on the phone, "You're wearing the mask again, aren't you?"
Are you wearing that stupid mask again? My gosh, Dad, how many times do I have to tell you this?
God, I hope you die from the disease that somehow I also inherit because it's genetic.
Oh my gosh, why are you looking like Chris Cooper today?
And then he sits down looking like James Franco because he remembers that's who he's based on right now. So he sits down like James Franco and he starts eating the eggs and really psychotically says to the lady about how delicious they are. It's that scene in Spider-Man 3. "How was your meal?"
So good.
The best part about the windows, I felt like they really missed a good part when he turns around and he sees Harry with that smile. I'm surprised because Raimi's such a huge fan of the comics. Well, for the most part, he hated Venom, but comics. I was so hoping that the cool moment that I always said in my head, the way I would have done that scene to change it a little bit, would have been Peter walks out, his phone goes off. He looks, he's got a message from Harry. One word. Gotcha. Turns around, and then there's Harry with the smirk, and then you see him mouth it again. Gotcha. Because as a fan of Harry, with everything happened with the robot parents and Harry's run as the Green Goblin, that was Harry's basically his catchphrase was "Gotcha." And I was so mad that they didn't have a line. They didn't have that line somewhere in there because that was Harry's Goblin catchphrase was "Gotcha" pretty much.
All right, James.
But anyways, yeah, you got that moment where he's like, "Oh my God, Dad, you're seriously wearing the mask right now? We're on the phone." Because you can just imagine he's on the phone with Norman, and Norman normally has a more serious business voice for Norman. So Harry picks up, "Hey, Harry, want to chat?" "Oh God, Dad, you're not doing this right now." "Oh, what are you talking about? I'm just being the Green Goblin. I'm your father, Norman Osborn." You know what I mean? Like, you just imagine that.
Come on, Dad. My girlfriend's right here.
"Oh, she's a goblin too." I mean, I didn't say that, Harry. "I can't even remember who my best friend is. It's fine." Yeah, it's fine, Harry. And then yeah, you got the bullseye line. Like I said, the final fight's really good. I really enjoy it. Then you got the dumbest ending though ever for Norman to save face for Secret Invasion. I just got a face palm for this. Spider-Man's dead in the building that collapsed. Pay no attention that he's gonna web swing 5 minutes later on some photograph or something. Let's ignore that. Literally, they never bring that up again because New York loves him, and then that sets up them loving him for Secret Invasion. But nobody calls out, "Hey, he said he killed Spider-Man, but Spider-Man's web swinging right now." Plus, he's saying that Venom is Spider-Man and he's a member of his team. But wasn't he just after him for being a killer? Literally, nobody calls it out in New York. Then you got the Dan Slott moment where he was really mad about because he knew that once Norman and the Thunderbolts went with the Avenger line with him, that Gargan was gone. And as soon as he came on the Spider-Man books, he hated Gargan being Venom. And Dan Slott said when he jumped on the books, the one thing he wanted to do, that's why he did the Venom Scorpion hybrid in the story, because he was thinking he was just getting out of his system because he really, really badly wanted Scorpion to be Gargan again and not Venom. You know what I mean? And then he knew that he couldn't do it because he was literally told, well he said, because I remember the way he took it, he said, well, why don't Norman take the Venom symbiote? Like, this is the way Dan Slott said. He pitched to Marvel. He loses his suit here, and then we tease at the ending of the story, like Norman saying, I'll give it to somebody else, the symbiote. Wouldn't that be great? He can have the symbiote. I just get Matt Gargan and Scorpion. I'll be right in the world. And they said, no, he wants Gargan. Like, literally, for some reason, Bendis said, no, I want Gargan. And so that's why immediately during Big Time, like the first arc, like the first second arc, he immediately goes, Scorpion. He's Scorpion again. The Venom suit's off him. It's Scorpion again.
Yeah.
And then Dan Slott, according to him, became super selfish. Like, this is the one moment with Dan Slott's badass, I gotta say, because he said, I got selfish now, and it's like no Spider-Man character can appear in another title without my permission, because I'm the Amazing Spider-Man writer. Where with the Brain Trust, we didn't have no leverage to keep Gargan or Green Goblin because Bendis wanted him for Avengers, and you got 4 different people with 4 different opinions. Where I'm the solo Amazing Spider-Man writer, I can say, no, you're not writing that story with that character. I got current control on him right now as the writer of Amazing Spider-Man. Which I got to admit, that is a kind of badass thing for him to do because he didn't want another Dark Reign on his hands with these characters where he can't even write them.
Well, to be honest, it makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah,
like,
I know. It's a badass moment to say, hey, I'm the solo writer of Amazing Spider-Man. You can't do a storyline with anybody without it going for me first.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. All right, James. But what do you think about this arc in general? Do you get a thumbs up, thumbs sideways, thumbs down? Maybe thumbs.
The first 3 parts are really dumb, but the last part saves it with the classic Spider-Man versus Green Goblin. Norman being just. I'll say right now, what saves this comic is Norman being Norman.
All right, so James gave it a thumbs sideways. I gave it a thumbs up. I recommend the story. James is probably like a little bit more iffy on it, but overall, I recommend the story. I think it's a decent enough read. So
it's a really good arc in Brain a Day. It's just Brain a Day hasn't really held up to me in the last few years when rereading them here with this podcast and stuff like that.
All right, but that's going to conclude our little review of this week, and that's also going to conclude this episode of the podcast. We don't really have anything else to talk about. So, James, any shout outs to the listeners before we sign off?
Shout outs to the Packers because we won. That's about it. I can't honestly think of anybody else to shout out. So, John, you take it before I leave more dead airspace.
All right. My shout out this week: Marvel, Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, Dan Slott, John Romita Jr. All of them. Thank you for Spider-Man this week. Thank you for all the characters we're talking about. Other shout outs this week. I want to shout out to Ed Brubaker and all of them for this Captain America Winter Soldier run that I've been reading. I've been slowly getting into the character Steve Rogers. He's quickly becoming my number 2 Marvel character. Not nearly as up there as Spider-Man is for me, but I'm enjoying Captain America, so I picked up the Winter Soldier trade. I'm liking it so far. About halfway through it. It's pretty good stuff. What else did I read this week? I read the first issue of Captain America Sam Wilson by Nick Spencer. I enjoyed that. I read the first issue of Spider-Gwen by Jason Latour. I enjoyed that. Let's see.
I read 2099. That was pretty good. Until you get
James read 20.
Really dark. The end from Miguel O'Hara. That ending is really dark. His girlfriend, far as we can tell him, the cliffhanger is dead, and so is his unborn child. That is really dark. I gotta spoiler.
So yeah, I enjoyed that.
Can I bring up my last issue I reviewed? The last comic I picked up this week. Lois and Clark: The Adventures of Superman. I know that's not the official title, but as a '90s kid, you know what I'm talking about. The old Dean Cain TV show for John, who probably has no idea what that was a reference to. I read this, and this is actually a pretty decent comic, and I enjoyed it. It's actually pretty good. Explaining why Superman has been sitting on his ass for 5 years in the New 52 universe, and it's actually pretty good. Except for when you get to the part where he reveals, "Hey, Lois, remember how Convergent ended with saying that every universe in DC history is still alive? Well, ours is still dead, so tough luck for us. But what about the fans that are big fans of our universe and want our universe to return, or at least have at least one series that takes place in our old universe, because that's the one that they all grew up and loved? Tough luck, New 52 is for them."
All right, but
go make me some now. Let's go make a good old American breakfast while I'll stare at the American flag because I'm Superman. I
don't really have any other shout outs this week, so that's going to do it for this week's episode of the podcast. There is something I will point out. I apologize. I'm a bit behind in the iTunes editing. So yeah, if you'll notice at the time of this episode, this is in total with all the episodes we've done. This is episode number 68. There's only 66 episodes up on the iTunes feed right now. I apologize for that. I will try to get back on the editing train in a bit here. I've had some stuff that I've had going on in the past couple of weeks that's kind of taken away from my editing time. So I do apologize for that. I'll try to get some of that stuff out within the next few days or so. Hopefully by the time of the next episode, we'll be up to date with the iTunes feed.
Oh, can I bring up one more shout out before we go off the air? My last shout out is to Dan Slott. Thank you for ruining me looking at Craven now, because I went to a store today, Target, and they had the Spider-Man, Marvel Legends, and they had Spider-Man. They had a Craven one, and when I see his shirt with the lion, all I'm thinking is Craven's nipples called. They want their face back.
Wow,
this is what you did to me. This is what you did to me. You go to bed without supper.
Oh gosh, James. All right, let's get off the air before James has any more psychotic rants. So thank you guys.
It was a joke, John, about how that comic now makes every time I see Craven. Now I can't help but think about that damn joke now.
All right, well, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you all next week, hopefully. So take care, and goodbye.